are an Israelite and you are keeping them laws, remember that's Ecclesiastes sums it up, right? The conclusion of the whole matter is that we keep these statutes, these commandments, and fear the Most High. Sometimes we get caught up doing too much. Sometimes we get caught up what Timothy says not to get caught up in genealogies, right? And all these other things, vain sayings and stuff like that. But one thing that you got to really understand is what we're going to read about right here in Esdras. Go ahead and read it out. 32. Second Esdras 3 and 32 down to 36.
Second Ezra chapter 3 and verse 32. Or is there any other people that knoweth thee beside Israel? Or what generation have so believed thy covenants as Jacob? And yet their reward appeareth not, and their labor hath no fruit. For I have gone here and there through the heathen.
So imagine the brother went on a mission. He went here and there through the heathen, right? And what happened?
And I see that they flow in wealth, and think not upon thy commandments.
Why don't they do that? We just read it, right? Psalms 147, 19 and 20. I know we repeat this these two precepts a whole lot, but sometimes we forget. Sometimes we look at the basic and the stuff that's, I guess, easy to absorb and comprehend, and we forget about it. But the Most High is telling you, look, I'm only dealing with you. Genesis 17, he made a covenant, a promise with who? With Abram, and said, your seed shall be blessed. Ishmael wasn't blessed. Esau wasn't blessed. Jacob had Isaac. Isaac was blessed, right? Isaac had Esau and Jacob. Jacob was blessed, and so forth. The 12 tribes came about. So when you look at these things, the same was for the judgment that was going to be upon this particular people, right? So now he's saying, I've gone to and fro throughout the heathen, because remember, at this time, we have gone through captivities already, right? We disobeyed. Another thing I want you always to remember, what happened with the 10 tribes? Does anybody recall what happened as far as after the kingdom split? If we have read the history, you go ahead and read your history. You check out that every king, it was 19 kings. Out of those 19 kings, how many righteous kings did we have? None. Well, you look, I believe I got a chart right here. We're going to go into it, and you're going to see it got bad. It got worse. The individual was wickedest, to the point that even just from that time frame, from that period of, I believe it was about 250 years, just imagine what's happened in a couple of years. Let's say you fall off the truth, right? Or just a couple of years from the plantation days in America. Just from the 60s, the separation, how our people, how they deal with each other. Back in the day, they used to greet each other. Nowadays, it's just bad looks. It's odd for you to get, a greeting from somebody, a stranger. It's sad. But just imagine that's in a couple of decades, right? Now imagine over 2 centuries of just being disconnected. Because as soon as Jeroboam took office, he said a temple or an altar in Dan, and then he said another one farther south. So just imagine that right there. He did that, so then the people started disconnecting from the Most High. So now imagine 250 years. Well, we're going to read about a little bit of, what happened with us. But go ahead. But always recall that, how far did we separate from the Most High?
Verse 34. Weigh thou therefore our wickedness now in the balance, and theirs also that dwell in the world. And so shall thy name nowhere be found but in Israel. Or when was it that they which dwell upon the earth have not sinned in thy sight? Or what people have so kept thy commandments?
All right, read the 34 again, the latter end.
And so shall thy name nowhere be found but in Israel.
Meditate on that. Dwell on that, because when we go through some of these excerpts from these various books and various authors and stuff like that, or historians, you're going to see that they themselves say, you know what, we were navigating throughout Europe, throughout various places where Israel really wasn't, because remember, the migration, after 70 AD, migrated everywhere. Before that, too, in the days of Babylon, a lot of people didn't come back. There was about 49 to 50,000 that came back to Israel, to Jerusalem. A lot of people stayed in Babylon. So we've been migrating and pretty much going all over the 4 corners of the earth. A couple here, a couple there. But they're going to tell you that, look, we haven't came across any other people that match, the ancient Hebrew Israelites, which is what Esdras is telling us right here. It says, and so shall thy name nowhere be found but in Israel. Continue.
Or when was it that they which dwell upon the earth have not sinned in thy sight? Or what people have so kept thy commandments? Thou shalt find that Israel by name have kept thy precepts, but not the heathen.
But not the heathen. And you're going to see I trip out just on fringes. Fringes alone. You're going to see all these nations. I have a couple of nations that you can see on that right there, right? Southwest, the north, northwest, southeast. I guess it's not covered, but it goes all the way down to Mexico, the Caribbean, Taino Indians and all that. A lot of these, no matter where you go, when they came over, the Spaniards, they were able to see a whole lot of similarities with the Jews, whether they were the Jews from up in Morocco or up in Spain or even back in Jerusalem. Because remember, by this time, 1492, the Ghanaian Empire was done, meaning the people that were in the western coast of Africa, your so-called, blacks or Judah and Benjamin, they were being done away. They were being put out. The Moors were being kicked out of Spain, and at the same time, we were being conquered. So when you look at Jeremiah 50, let's go to Jeremiah 50 and 33. I know I'm kind of going ahead, but I'll come back from that. So what we just read in these couple of precepts right here is showing us that Esdras in that time, he had gone everywhere throughout the heathens, right? But he had not came across anybody that was keeping the judgments of the Most High, except for Israel. And he said everybody sinned. But if you weight their sin with ours, we could never outdo them bastards. Because just imagine the stuff that they done and they continue to do. We've been wicked. We've been bad. But the Most High said, look, these individuals, that's why Hebrews tells you that there's nobody more profane than Esau. We'll go ahead and get that. Jeremiah 50 and 33. So I was saying, the Ghanaian Empire was done away with. You could read that in Timbuktu. That's a pretty small book, easy book to go through. Timbuktu shows you that the Ghanaian Empire was at its fall. The Moors were kicked out, and the Spaniards were coming to conquer the Americas. Go ahead and get that right quick.
The book of Jeremiah, chapter 50, and verse 33. Thus saith the Lord of hosts, the children of Israel and the children of Judah were oppressed together, and all that took them captives held them fast. They refused to let them go.
So then, when you read that, the only time that happened, when were we oppressed together for the last time before the Americas? In Egypt, right? So then, this is after the Babylonian Empire and all that, right? So it's talking about a future prophecy. So it's letting you know both northern and southern kingdom were going to be oppressed together. So now, imagine that particular year, everybody's getting hit, showing you how the Most High works. When his prophecies come to fruition, sometimes it's unbelievable. But guess what? They happen, they take place, and even understanding, 1619 to where we at now. He prophesied that in Genesis 13, that we were going to be out here for about 400 years, right? And look at how the situation is getting. So it's a lot of things that we got to take into consideration when we're living our lives, right? So I believe I want Hosea 8 and 8 before we continue. I'm pulling out a lot of these precepts. Like I said, we're going to go and watch a lot of videos and stuff like that. But just things so you guys could think about in being able to identify your brethren. All right? Go ahead.
Hosea chapter 8 and verse 8. Israel is swallowed up. Now shall they be among the Gentiles as a vessel wherein is no pleasure.
Where we at now? Everywhere we at, you go to Europe, you go to South, Central America, the Caribbean, as you're going to see in a minute, there's no pleasure in Israel. They look at us like savages, low class, what else? Minorities, right? All the negative stuff. Any negative thing that you could think about, that's Israel. That's how they've titled us, right? So understanding that, as we go forth, just recall those things. But we're also going to see the other part that Ezra was talking about. how only our people were able to keep these laws, these statutes, these commandments, all right? So let me get this right quick. Is that what it is? So just to understand, you know, when the kingdoms were broken down, let's go to 1 Kings to see what happened in our history that caused for this to take place. Because one thing, you know, as you read these scriptures, you get understanding for a lot of things with just one precept. This particular, you know, chapter that we're going to read right here, it shows you, you know, as far as multiple wives. Was it a sin to have multiple wives when we read about King Solomon? It wasn't, right? It wasn't. But what was the sin? Let's go ahead and read. So this is what the kingdom is. The northern kingdom is Reuben, Simeon, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, Asher, Issachar, Zebulun, Manasseh, and Ephraim. Judah, Benjamin, southern kingdom, right? Where's Levi? They everywhere, exactly. They were scattered throughout, you know, every single tribe throughout Israel. So let's go ahead and get 1 Kings 11 and verse 1.
The book of 1 Kings, chapter 11 and verse 1. But King Solomon loved many strange women, together with the daughter of Pharaoh, women of the Moabites, Ammonites, Edomites, Zidonians, and Hittites. Of the nations concerning which the Lord said unto the children of Israel, Ye shall not go into them, neither shall they come in unto you, for surely they will turn away your heart after their gods.
Exactly. So that was the main reason why we weren't supposed to go and have any relationships with these women. Imagine Solomon was one of the brightest individuals in Israel, and he still fell for this. Ezra tells you that. The book of Ezra tells you that. Nehemiah goes in and talks about that, you know. So at the end of the day, it wasn't that he had multiple wives, but he had these individuals like Deuteronomy 7. When you look at it, it tells you, make no covenant. Don't marry with them. Don't allow your sons to go in unto them. Why? Because at the end of the day, they're going to be stumbling blocks, and they're going to cause you to err, which is exactly what happened. Read verse 4.
Verse 4, For it came to pass when Solomon was old, that his wives turned away his heart after other gods, and his heart was not perfect with the Lord his God, as was the heart of David his father.
Exactly. Go ahead.
For Solomon went after Ashtaroth, the goddess of the Zidonians, and after Milcom, that abomination of the Ammonites. And Solomon did evil in the sight of the Lord, and went not fully after the Lord, as did David his father.
So when you continue reading, you see all the idols and all the false gods that he started, you know, setting up in Israel. So imagine that's Solomon, right? Who followed Solomon was Rehoboam. Rehoboam didn't do as bad, but guess what? He's still, you could see even at that time, it's crazy. When you read about Rehoboam, when he was set up, he was already dealing with the 10 tribes, and do you recall how he was dealing with the 10 tribes? What kind of relationship they had? It wasn't a good relationship. Remember, they came and asked for him to have mercy on them, and he took counsel from the elders, and he took counsel from the young ones, and he went with the young counsel, and at the end of the day, he said, look, whatever rigor my dad was doing, you know, I'm going to be way worse than this individual and treat you in a, you know, messed up way or whatnot. So even then, in 1 Chronicles 28, because sometimes people bring up that, you know what, the Indians had the blacks in slavery, had the blacks in bondage. When you read the history, yeah, that did take place. But when you read deeper than that, and even prior to that, you got to remember, is everybody in Israel righteous? Because when we read it's 2 Chronicles, right, 28 and 8. Check that out right quick. People forget that this was happening since way back in the day. So, and I'm bringing these things up because a lot of times we get stuck on that, and then we figure it's 1 Chronicles 8 and
Verse 8.
28 and 8, yeah. And then we start hating each other. We start hating each other over, you know, a little excerpt that we read, and then we don't continue to dig. You look at the black Indians, you look at when the slaves were out here, and Mexico was in power, meaning native Mexicans. Because you look at every country nowadays, it's rare that you see any Israelite running it. You go to Mexico, it's going to be Isa. You go to El Salvador, a lot of them are Ishmaelites. You go to South America, you got a lot of Moabites. You go to the Caribbean, you got other types of Europeans. You go like to the ABC Islands, you got the Dutch, the Netherlands. So when you look at the dominant society, it's not Israel. Because remember, Job 9 and 20, 9 and 24, right? It says the earth shall be given, would be given to the wicked, to the hands of the wicked, right? So then it's not only here in America, because even look at when Obama was in the seat. We get any rights? The so-called black men, black, nation. You look at that, right? But they paint this image, and you feel like, the people are with you. They paint all these they create all these different parties, but at the end of the day, it's them running it. That's why it's silly for our people to even go ahead and vote, whether it's here, it's Mexico, anywhere. You look at Mexico, right now that the earthquake went down, they were pocketing the money. Mexicans themselves were like, look, if you're sending money, send it directly to somebody that you could trust that's going to be involved with the community. Say, don't send it to the Red Cross. Don't send it to no government, office, because they're going to pocket it. And then when you look at these individuals and you look at their background, their genealogy, a lot of these individuals, Spaniards, Europeans, Edomites. So that's one thing that you got to focus on, the condition, the curses, and then as well as people are able to receive these laws. But go ahead and get that.
2 Chronicles chapter 28 and verse 8. And the children of Israel carried away captive their brethren 200,000 women, sons, and daughters, and took also away much spoil from them, and brought the spoil to Samaria.
So you see that? Was that lawful? That's unlawful, right? But did it happen? Yes. Does it happen? Yes. It's happened. It's going to continue to happen. Imagine we're killing each other over some colors, over some corners that don't belong to us. And people act all crazy. Oh, look, they had them in slavery. Yeah, but how about everything else that you look as far as how they were going and dealing with each other, building with each other, to the point that Esau had to come through, divide, and conquer. And then, of course, what they feed us is that hate. Brother went in this weekend as far as the drugs and all that. Look at the drugs. Look at the languages, how strategic these individuals were to separate us and keep us separate. Always. You go to jail, clashing. In the schools, clashing. I was talking to a brother, and he said, yeah, in Oakland, we're pretty good. We get along. Southern Kingdom and Northern Kingdom, they get along. They just beef in school as, to pass time. So it's like, it's something that we just do because it's the society, the way that society's been, how they've indoctrinated us to always go at it with each other. But as soon as we come together, they're back in the mix, right? Trying to break us apart. But just so you guys could get that, it says the children of Israel carried away captive of their brethren 200,000, which in the scriptures you find in Leviticus that we were not to be doing those type of things. We understand that in as far as the law, because sometimes we wonder, why were these other nations built or created, right? If you understand that, when you go back to the statutes, the laws, to be our servants, to be our slaves. But then what happened at the end of the day, we started going at it with each other. But let's get back. It says, who are the Israelites? Go ahead and read Deuteronomy 7 and 6, Ark.
The book of Deuteronomy, chapter 7 and verse 6. For thou art an holy people unto the Lord thy God. The Lord thy God hath chosen thee to be a special people unto himself, above all people that are upon the face of the earth.
Exactly. So when we start understanding this, you could take 1 Peter 2 and 9, chosen generation, a royal priesthood, and so forth, right? 2nd Esdras, it says that 6 and 55, that the Most High made the world for our sakes. And then we go to Deuteronomy 28. Just a couple of things for you guys to think about and see who's been affected by these things, right? Look at, imagine smallpox when it hit us out here in the Americas, right? You got all these other sicknesses that our people are still affected by. Just looking at these, we were talking with brethren as far as the shots and all that. What does it do to our people at the end of the day? Right? But our people are so lost. Let's go to Hosea 4 real quick. Hosea 4. And we forget that everything that's happening to us is due to our transgression, due to our disobedience. Get Hosea 4 and let's get verse 1. Go ahead.
The book of Hosea, chapter 4 and verse 1. Hear the word of the Lord, ye children of Israel. For the Lord hath a controversy with the inhabitants of the land, because there is no truth, nor mercy, nor knowledge of God in the land.
That's the main reason, because there's no knowledge of the Most High in the land. So then, therefore, we left the Most High. Guess what? He left us. He said, as soon as we up in here in the truth, in, what is it, Wisdom of Solomon? It tells you that as soon as we act, we allow pride to kick in, the Most High says, I'm gone. So imagine if that's all it takes. Now imagine 250 years of being disobedient to the Most High. Doing everything that the Most High said not to do. Setting homosexuals up in the priesthood. Imagine that. We went at it. We're about to keep a feast in about, 13 days. That shows how this family was so into the Most High and keeping the statutes of the Most High and protecting their nation, that it only took for those 5 individuals to regain what Alexander the Greek had came and conquered. Imagine that. Just showing you how the Most High says, look, I don't need numbers. As long as you have that little mustard seed, that faith of a mustard seed, right? He says you're able to make things happen. If you keep these laws, these statutes, that Judith 5, that 5th chapter, he says, as long as we're with the Most High, we're good. We're able to make moves. So then when you start looking at the history, hundreds of brothers on ships, a couple of Edomites, no strength. Look at the numbers that we have. We're minorities, right? But we are more than these individuals. I was just going over the history. We're going into the Byzantine Empire. It talks about the Romans, how the Romans, it was rare for a Roman female to have more than one kid, right? So when she had more than, she had a couple of kids or whatnot, they were praised. So that shows you, like, look, Israel, in our worst conditions, just multiply. It shows you that wasn't no so-called Mexican or no so-called black person, right? But it just shows you that, look, no matter what condition we in, the Most High still got that love for us to still keep us afloat, to keep us, to allow us to continue. Because imagine everything that we're going through right now. And it's hitting us because it's affecting just people that I know as far as, having miscarriages and all that. That's where we got to be ahead of the game, be smart, and learn, go back to our heritage. Because a lot of times we get caught up with all the stuff that society pushes on us. But just going back at these precepts, the Most High said, look, read verse 6.
Hosea chapter 4 and verse 6. My people are destroyed for a lack of knowledge. Because thou hast rejected knowledge, I will also reject thee. That thou shalt be no priest to me. Seeing thou hast forgotten the law of thy God, I will also forget thy children.
So let's get Deuteronomy 28 and 23. So that's one of the main things that I'm going to focus on tonight is these curses. A couple years back, they assigned the soldiers to go into Deuteronomy 28 and break down so-called blacks, so-called Southern Kingdom, and so-called Northern Kingdom, and to see if who fell under these curses, right? We're going to go over a couple of these, and then we're going to also, scope out some videos to really see if the so-called Latino people, the so-called Hispanic people, which are names that, the oppressors gave us, if they fit these curses. And like I said again, like Ezra stated, only Israel suffers from these, these things that the Most High set out. But there's a couple of Edomites, a couple of heathens in the mix. All right, so let's get Deuteronomy 28 and 23.
The book of Deuteronomy chapter 28 and verse 23. And thy heaven that is over thy head shall be brass, and the earth that is under thee shall be iron. The Lord shall make the rain of thy land powder and dust, From heaven shall it come down upon thee, until thou be destroyed.
Exactly. So you look at this right here. This is a Central American jail. You look at these things. I mean, look at the jails out here. A lot of our brothers been to jail, right? Jails out here, you can't compare them to this right here, right? And let me see if I could pull this video up right quick. What else did I want from here? Let's go through these. Let's go through these, and then I'll come back to the videos. Go to 28 and 33.
Verse 33?
Yes.
Deuteronomy chapter 28 and verse 33. The fruit of thy land and all thy labor shall a nation which thou knowest not eat up. And thou shalt be only oppressed and crushed always, so that thou shalt be mad for the sight of thine eyes, which thou shalt see.
All right, go to 65.
Verse 65. And among these nations shalt thou find no ease, neither shall the sole of thy foot have rest. But the Lord shall give thee there a trembling heart, and failing of eyes, and sorrow of mind.
So a lot of times we think about cotton fields, right? I hear brothers out there talking about cotton fields, and you know how the so-called black community is not getting anything for it. And that's true. A lot of times we forget about the sugar cane industry that our people in the Dominican, the islands, you know, had to work. No different than the cotton fields. Now, does anybody ever think where the cotton is being picked in this present time? Because it's still got to be picked, right? But we forget about these things. Oh, that was back in the day. We still rocking cotton, right? There's a couple of cotton plantations still out here in the Americas, but you know, Esau slick. Esau slick, and you know, anything that they do out here, it's much more expensive than if they ship it out, right? Do it in other countries. So we're gonna get, you know, I wasn't able to come up with good footage, but at least so you could understand, one of the places that I know that this is still taking place is in South America and Peru. You know, we went out there in 2005, and I was telling brothers, little sisters like about, I want to say 14 years of age, 9 a.m., they had 100 pounds of cotton already picked by 9 a.m. And, you know, it's I guess she's probably fortunate. In Central America, one of the things that back in the 80s was being exported used to be coffee. Imagine the coffee industry. Starbucks, right? Every cup is what, about $5-7? What happened during the 80s in Central America? The CIA got slick, America got slick. They were afraid that Fidel Castro was coming in with the Soviets and was about to take over Nicaragua and Central America. They got the guerrillas, gave them arms. They got the military, gave them arms, both Central Americans, and had each other go at it with each other, go at it and kill each other. Over 20 years of war in Central America. You think, man, that's bad. Just saw some footage this week. The people out in Central America, Honduras, El Salvador, Guatemala, mainly Honduras and El Salvador, they said, look, it was better back then and during the war, because the only reason you would get got was if you got caught up in some crossfire. You're going to see now, it's much different, it's much worse. Let's see. Get Deuteronomy 28 and 37 up.
The book of Deuteronomy, chapter 28, and verse 37. And thou shalt become an astonishment, a proverb and a byword among all nations, whither the Lord thy God shall lead thee.
And you guys already know how that goes, right? We hate on everybody. Just us as Israelites, we hate on each other. I still don't understand how Salvadorians and Mexicans don't get along. Then you got Haitians and what are the two islands? Dominicans, Puerto Ricans, Colombians. Unless it's wickedness, oh, we there. We good. But when it comes to building each other, it's crazy. You ask them, why do you beef? Why do you not get along with each other? Not really, I don't know. You know what, I was raised like this. You look at hoods, you know, down the street, you got a so-called Latino gang. I was watching a little documentary, and it's like, yeah, you know, we're raised to hate the black man. We're raised to just when I was little, we just wanted to exterminate them. And the guy's like, and why? We don't know. I mean, that's just the way we're raised. So it's like, when it comes down with what Daniel's talking about, confusing of faces, man, it really affects us. And we don't see that. We think it's just the way it is. That's just the way that life is, and we're going to continue with it. You know, it's funny, a brother was talking about interracial marriages being black and Hispanic. Just imagine, think about that for a minute. Interracial, but we come from the same forefather. But that's the condition that we in nowadays, thinking that we different. And it's funny, a lot of times, because you look, Raham just went to, where did he go last year? To one of the islands, Dominican Republic. And he was tripping out because there was brothers that looked like his twin. The only difference is that they were speaking Spanish. But just the language alone makes a big difference. Oh, you know what? Oh, nah, that's not one of my people. They're speaking Spanish. Simple things like that. Just because they got another oppressor that came and conquered that particular region, now we feel like, you know what, we're not the same. You go to South America, oh, now they speak Portuguese. That's not us. Those are Brazilians. You think about it, when the Spaniards came through, when you look at even Esdras, what it talks about, leaving the Euphrates, going into the Black Sea, going into the Atlantic, right, to the Indian Ocean, coming out into the Atlantic, what happened? The first section that you're going to hit is South America. When you look at looking at the triangular slave trade, a lot of these so-called Africans, you know, Israelites that were taken, they ended they were dropped off in Brazil at first. Brazil was one of the first places where they got dropped off. So if that's the case, then wouldn't you think a lot of Judah and Benjamin is in South America, right? But like I'm saying, when you start reading these precepts and looking at history, you start understanding, oh, you know what, that chart is it's not 100. Might have some, because yeah, there is documentation that talks about they went into the Valley of Mexico and they said, you know what, I'm from the tribe of Issachar. Yeah, but they didn't say the whole land of Mexico. Remember, Mexico used to come all the way up to Oregon. So that means the Native Americans here were what, Issachar? But see, that's the thing that we got to really understand these precepts for what they are and not get caught up with, you know, with what, I mean, Acts 5:29 tells you, right? Believe the words of the Most High, not whatever, you know, man got to say. But again, that's why Timothy said, don't get caught up in that. At the end of the day, let's keep these statutes, these commandments, and move forth. Build with each other. So when you look at 37, you know, there's a bunch of different terms. And like, look at this guy right here. You look at that flag, he Cuban. You look at him, you might be like, oh, he's probably an Armenian. You never know. Bring him this law, bring him this book, then you filter it out. This will do the filtering. If he's able to come and connect with this, because remember, in Cuba, you had a lot of Edomites that moved in. You had a lot of Germans that came in. You had a lot of these different Edomite, you know, Dutch and all that came and moved into Cuba. So even when you look at Cuba, you got a lot of Edomites, and you got like, who knows, Celia Cruz, right? The singer. Huh? Oh, Santeria. No, I'm talking about Celia. They even have a show about her, right? Celia Cruz. You look at her, dark than a mug. So you got from dark individuals to individuals like this. But again, what you're going to do is what, let's go to Romans right quick. Go to Romans 8:16. Because this is pretty much, I talked to Aladat a couple of times, like, how you able to figure out about, you know, these Latinos, who's who? Pretty sure you work with a couple of them, right? Are you able to tell? Right? But so-called, but aren't you able to see the differences in the spirits? Even when you bring them this, you know, like you give them a couple of hints of our heritage. Some will dig it. Some will tell you, oh, yeah, I know about that. You know what? My family was doing this, that, and the third. Others look at you like, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't relate. Just deal with some Argentinians. A lot of Argentinians, the original Argentinians are called gauchos. The gauchos, when you look at gauchos, they look like straight brothers, big old jakes. You look at the Argentinians that are there, the light-skinned, the pale ones, they hate every Hispanic. Every native that looks, that has some type of tone, they look at you like, you know what? Like Esau looks at us, because that's what they are. They're Edomites. So, but meditate on this. Go ahead, 8 and 16.
The book of Romans, chapter 8 and verse 16. The Spirit itself beareth witness with our spirit that we are the children of God.
Exactly. Go ahead.
And if children, then heirs, heirs of God, and joint heirs with Christ, if so be that we suffer with him, that we may be also glorified together.
Exactly. Suffer with him. The Spirit is what's going to bear witness of who Israel is. That's what Ezra was talking about. I've gone to all kinds of regions on this earth. And at the end of the day, guess what? That's why a lot of our people get caught up. Imagine if we're caught up right now, just understanding the New Testament. Nah, that brother he was a Roman citizen. The word said it itself. He was a Roman citizen. Zechariah 7 and 14, or just go back to Deuteronomy 28 and 64, because this is one of the curses that's listed in the 28th chapter of Deuteronomy. And then it talks about it. We read about it in Hosea 8 and 8, Zechariah 7 and 14. Jeremiah talks about it. That was going to be one of the main things. Jeremiah, what is it? We'll go to Isaiah after. Go ahead. Get that?
The book of Deuteronomy, chapter 28 and verse 64. And the Lord shall scatter thee among all people, from the one end of the earth even unto the other. And there thou shalt serve other gods, which neither thou nor thy fathers have known, even wood and stone.
Exactly. So imagine, the Most High didn't take that lightly. He knew how we were going to be if he scattered us throughout all these heathens, all these heathen nations. But one thing he said, look, no matter what, you're still going to have that law is going to be written in your heart, your spirit. There's certain things that we don't do as a nation. There's certain things that no matter where we go, unless we really get caught up in the mix, mainly out here in America, we start partaking of these things. But there's a lot of stuff that when you look at our spirit, we don't take and we don't do. What happened?
You could really see how much I'm around a lot of 10 tribes, so I could see how much we are like. Like, even when it comes to the music and everything, you know how Jake sit around and rap and do all that. 10 tribes do the same thing, but they singing, mariachi, ranchera. They singing out loud, like, on the job. So I'm like, man, they just like us, even when it comes to, like, even in wickedness, like the unclean foods. They love the unclean foods, the shrimp, the lobster, and all that other stuff. Yep. So when you look at the other nations, Armenians, Arabs, they don't do none of that. They not lively like that. You feel me? So all those things, and when you're around them and you see it, you're like, man, that's crazy. Our spirit really connect. Like, I talked to a couple of 10 tribe cats, at my job, and he was like, what you doing for Halloween? I was like, nothing. He was like, oh, you must be religious. He was like, I am too. I'm doing research or whatever on what religion I should, get into or whatever. But he saw that spirit in me, so that's why he started talking to me about it. So,
Yeah, no, I feel that. And it's a trip that you even bring that out, because remember in the scriptures too, what is it? I believe it's Exodus that was talking about the difference between the Hebrew women and the Egyptian women. And that's where you see. It's like, if you guys had that language, if that barrier wasn't there, you'd see the difference. You see the difference between the women of the other nations and our women. You look at the spirit of our men, the same thing, our children, and all of that, and it's crazy. Like I was saying, man, there's so many accounts in the past that show you these things. They show you how our people was always, when we were doing good, when we were trying to, live according to the Most High's laws, there's so much documentation showing how we kept ourselves separate from everybody else. But even like you said, in the wickedness, you're able to go throughout the four corners of the earth. Of course, now the Moabites and Ammonites are picking up. Everybody, you got Armenians doing trap and all that. You got everybody jumping on the bandwagon, but that's because there's internet. Before the internet was out, you could go to these countries and you trip out like, man, the spirit is the same. Of course, now it's out there, so anybody jumps on the bandwagon. But yeah, I forgot. You guys recall that, right? Is in Exodus, the lively women. Check that out whenever you get a chance. So going back, to 64, said the Most High was going to scatter us. Go to Jeremiah 17 and 4 to really understand how deep that was. How deep was it for us to just be taken and kicked out, evicted from our homeland? We don't have land. Brother just kicked me some information this week, and it talks about, I forgot the name of the act, but each European that crossed the Atlantic was given 50 acres and tools to build. Call it the Head Start program, to build out here in the Americas. But they trip on us when, you know, they talk about handouts, GR, welfare. How about you give us some education then if you don't want that issue? Some true education. How about you put us up to be able to be, you know, self-dependent, independent? They don't do that because it's just a game at the end of the day. Allow some of us to have businesses and give jobs to our own people in the way that the Most High instructed us. Imagine that. Imagine doing construction. Who's in there? Like his brother said, it's all Israel. Allow us to run them companies. It's over. Anything, you know. Just imagine taking the Sabbath off as a nation. It's done. This nation is crumbling, man. You know, they talk about these walls. It's funny. And who's going to build these walls if they do throw them up? Israel. And Israel out there like, give us a job. We don't care. We'll build these walls. Like, that's really going to do something. You got the cartels doing, man, they got tunnels. It's nothing new. We had them back in the days during, you know, the captivity, during slavery. We had them back in the day in the siege of 70 AD. It's nothing new. That's one thing that when, you know, the present brothers talk about that era. Esau loses a couple million, and they still got a couple million left. They killing themselves. Don't have that spirit that we have. But go ahead and get 17 and 4, book of Jeremiah.
The book of Jeremiah, chapter 17 and verse 4. And thou, even thyself, shalt discontinue from thine heritage that I gave thee. And I will cause thee to serve thine enemies in a land which thou knowest not. We have kindled a fire in mine anger, which shall burn forever.
Mm-hmm. So the Most High is letting you know, look, you will be discontinued from your heritage. Imagine that. Do we really understand what our heritage consists of? Let's go right quick and get that. Go to Romans. Go to Romans 9. Because that's the thing that our people don't see. Because if we did see this, guess what? We would be back in these laws and these statutes real quick. Read from verse 1.
The book of Romans, chapter 9 and verse 1. I say the truth in Christ. I lie not. My conscience also bearing me witness in the Holy Spirit, that I have great heaviness and continual sorrow in my heart. For I could wish that myself were accursed from Christ for my brethren, my kinsmen according to the flesh, who are Israelites.
Who are what?
Who are Israelites.
So he didn't say the whole world, those that are spiritually Israel, because there's no such thing as a spiritual Israelite. Because some people get caught up, oh yeah, Romans 8, so that means, you know, anybody is able to get it. It's in the DNA. It's in our genealogy. I was talking to a brother about Bob Marley and his kids. Bob Marley himself, Edomite. Lauryn Hill, she got with the brother. All those babies, Edomites, right? You look at the movie, what is that? The Roots, Chicken George, an Edomite. Was he going through certain things? Yes, but guess what? His daddy was an Edomite. That makes him an Edomite. Oh, no, he's dark, though. He's Israel. No, don't get caught up in that skin tone. Peep the spirit. Look at these individuals. Nah, but you know what? Bob Marley, he made good music. Look at Damon. He's revolutionary. It don't matter. If that's the case, you know, test him. Really put him under the flame and see if he's still about these so-called Zion, right? And Jah. He won't be about it. It's not in his spirit. Ezra's told us. The scriptures tell you. Psalms 147 tells us. All throughout. Right here, Paul is telling you the same thing. So it says, my kinsmen according to flesh, who are Israelites. Go ahead.
To whom pertaineth the adoption and the glory and the covenants and the giving of the law and the service of God and the promises.
And the promises. Imagine that. So if you really meditate on all that, the adoption, glory, covenant, and the giving of the law, and the service of the Most High. The Most High said, I made the earth for your sake. I'm your God. I adopted you. I'm going to punish you as well. He says, because those individuals that I don't punish, guess what? They're considered bastards. All the other 17 nations, they're bastard nations. If we really understood that, we wouldn't be here. We would have been gone already. But even us, sometimes in the truth, we forget about these things. Start thinking, you know, life is all great. You know, life is good. I'm going to just continue about my own business instead of really focusing and, you know, trying to gather our people and get us, you know, to get us up out of here. Read verse 5.
Verse 5. Whose are the fathers, and of whom, as concerning the flesh, Christ came? Whose is over all? Who is over all? God bless forever. Amen.
Exactly. So even Yahweh Shai himself, he's like, look, I'm only, you read it throughout the scriptures, only for Israel. So when you read Jeremiah 31, 35 through 36, is letting you know that a lot of people think that Israel was done away with. You talk to some Christians, Jehovah's Witness, guess what? The 12 tribes, they're done. Because Christ came, they rejected him, and then that's it. Well, let's go to Revelation, what is it, chapter 7? Talking about the elite, talking about each gate pertains to each tribe of Israel. How does that make any sense? Even in the Old Testament, it tells you. When we go to 1 Chronicles, let's go to 1 Chronicles 9 and 1. Because I feel like it becomes real complicated for people to understand this. But like I keep repeating, remember, let the law filter it out. Let the law filter, you know, whether an individual is an Israelite or not. Go ahead, read 9 and 1.
Verse 1. So all Israel were reckoned by genealogies. And behold, they were written in the book of the kings of Israel.
So that's it. You go, you know, the numbers and so forth throughout the history. It says all Israel's reckoned by genealogy. It's a scary thing, too. Tell me, is it not? You really look at it like, man, all right, start tracing your forefathers. And sometimes you can't even do that. But guess what? At the end of the day, you're able to keep these laws, these statutes. At the end of the day, you read Isaiah 14, right? Would you rather be in eternal hellfire, or would you rather be a servant to an Israelite? Right? So I look at it. But remember, at the end of the day, if you know, a lot of people get dropped or they fall out, either part of the 2/3 or a heathen. At the end of the day, the judgment is the same, right? So all we could do is keep pushing. But let's get to some of this footage right quick. So that was just that, to earth and the stars be gone, the prophecy of Hijah. Let me get some of this. So as far as the history, you guys are aware of what happened, right? The split, Northern Kingdom, Southern Kingdom. Hiram took over Rehoboam took over the Northern Kingdom. Rehoboam took over the Southern Kingdom. Jeroboam took over the Northern Kingdom. And like I said, over 250 years of wickedness. Started following all these things. Modern day, right? You had an argument in a Spanish station today talking about nautical, you know, the nautical corridos and Spanish rappers talking about this female, and they're out here upset about it. Like it means anything. They're about to celebrate her birthday on the 13th. You're going to see a lot of Mexicans get together, I think it's the 12th or 13th of December, to celebrate her birthday or whatever. So here, this is what I was talking about. You look at this, right? Kings of the Northern Kingdom. And you look at Jeroboam all the way down to Hosea the king. And you look at the character of these individuals. Bad, 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 extra bad, worst of all. Ahab, bad, mostly bad, mostly bad. You look at all these things. You know, but when you look at extra bad, right? Who is it? The 6, Omri. When you look at Omri, when you do your own research, look at Omri, because that's one of the titles that Israel started going by. So when you look at the post-captivity names of Israel after we left the Assyrian captivity, because remember, get 2nd Esdras 13. One thing that people don't understand of Second Esdras is that it said a group of Israelites came together, had a council, right, and said, let's get out of here and let's depart from these heathens and from these wicked customs. And it say all of Israel, all of the 10 tribes, because even then you look at Tobit. Tobit was a Nephthalite. You look at, I think it's Anna in the New Testament. She was from the tribe of Asher. So it don't mean that everybody departed. It don't mean that people weren't left with Judah and Benjamin and, you know, Levi in the southern kingdom as far as the 10 tribes is concerned. But it also doesn't mean that Israel didn't go. You know, Israel migrated into Asia. Israel migrated into Europe. In Jonah, it tells you that even before the Israelites were led into Assyria, into the Assyrian captivity, they fled into the Mediterranean. Look up the Phoenicians as well. You look at the Phoenicians, it was King Solomon, King David, who led the Phoenicians, a seafaring people, which consisted of Israel, the Sidonians, and the, what are the other people? Tyre, the people from Tyre and Sidon, right? And these people were already in those days migrating to the Americas. There's documentation of that. When you look up Phoenicians, and don't just come up on the because the history that's gonna pop up is mainly gonna be the Sidonian people and the people from Tyre. Try to go deeper, and you'll find that Solomon was the one that was leading these people. Because you read it in Kings. Remember, Hiram came through and started negotiating with Solomon. Was it Solomon? Yeah, with Solomon to build the temple. And you go deeper into their history, it shows you that these individuals were coming out to the Great Lakes, and were coming up on the ores, on the copper ores. The copper ores, they came from out here in the Michigan and so forth, went down to Mexico, Brazil, and went back to Eziongaber, which is a port in South Edom, which is where Solomon had copper factories. All that is documented. I don't have it with me at this moment, but you know, I'll pull it up and share it with you guys. But so I could just show you this. I mean, just showing you this. When you do your research, check out Omri, because Omri, like I was saying, Omri. When you look at the history of Israel, we lost our heritage. So it wasn't we weren't known as the house of Israel or the house of Ephraim or the northern kingdom, but one of the names was House of Omri, and then of course it continued on till that didn't even come up. So this is what happened when you look at the exile from Samaria. We got booted out in the days of Hoshea the king. We got sent to modern day Iraq and Iran, and we ended up out here, right? You look at the Euphrates River, which is around here. And we're going to see what happened in 2nd Esdras. Go ahead, get 2nd Esdras 13 and verse 40.
The book of 2nd Esdras, chapter 13, and verse 40. Those are the 10 tribes which were carried away prisoners out of their own land in the time of Hosea the king, whom Shalmaneser the king of Assyria led away, captive, and he carried them over the waters, and so came they into another land. But they took this counsel among themselves that they would leave the multitude of the heathen and go forth into a further country where never mankind dwelt.
That's the key point right there. The key in this precept is where mankind never dwelt. You look at everything. That's what I'm saying. History is real vital. When you look at this, the Assyrian captivity, right? You look at the old world, how it was known or whatnot. Pretty much Africa, people dwelt in. Europe, people were dwelling in. Asia Minor, people were there. That whole Eastern Hemisphere was occupied. So the only place that wasn't occupied, they didn't say visited or, you know, people were going and bringing, because when you look at Kings 2, there were certain minerals, certain things that were brought. Even when they talk about the coca leaves, talk about the Egyptians, that's one of the things that they use to mummify, right? Those things are natural and, you know, native to like South America. So obviously people are navigating the earth, circumnavigating the earth. But what is said right here is a place where mankind had never dwelt in, right? So then it gives you more clues. Let's go ahead, continue.
Excuse me. That they might there keep their statutes, which they never kept in their own land.
So imagine that. That's proof of what we just read as far as all the kings of the northern kingdom. It says, look, it got so rough that, you know what, let's leave the multitude. Let's leave them all like a drug addict, right? Let's not be around here because, you know, if we stay around here, we're gonna trip again. And we're going to end up transgressing the laws of the Most High. So let's get up out of here. That way, they said that there we might be able to keep these statutes, these laws, these commandments. Go ahead, continue.
And they entered into Euphrates by the narrow passage of the river. For the Most High then showed signs for them, and held still the flood till they were passed over.
All right. And then, you know, the Most High, as we look at these precepts, we think about it. Crossing the Red Sea, right? Crossing the Jordan. Sometimes we think about it like, man, that's kind of, you know, you might have doubts about that. But what just happened in the Caribbean that we were scoping out some footage of this past summer? The ocean was left naked, dried. The Most High is showing you, like, look, even with the new moon, the full moon, you look at the tides. Sometimes the water decreases, sometimes the waves and, you know, the tides increase. Everything's possible with the Most High. But a lot of times we have doubt, like, nah, that's not possible. That couldn't have happened. All of that happens. Look at the Grand Canyon. You don't think there was water there before? Right? I mean, just look at the other rivers that we had water back in the 90s that are fully, you know, completely dry nowadays. But just even that with them, that incident that happened in the Caribbean islands, it shows you how water was just removed. And it was like that. I don't know if it ever came back, but I know weeks went by and it was still dry. So, you know, that happened. So right here, when you look at these accounts, you could take 2 Kings 17 and 24 down. It shows you in the history of, in the Bible, in the book of Kings, you know, when this happened and where the people were spread or were sent to. It also lets you understand Matthew 10 and 5, when Yahweh Shai himself said, look, don't go to the land of the Samaritans. Why wouldn't they? Why wouldn't they be, you know, allowed to go out there? Or why wasn't it a priority to go out there? The multitude of the heathen, because remember, Israel got removed, and what happened? All these nations were brought into Samaria. So then what was the point of going out there? Yahweh Shai already knew that our people had taken that mission to Arsareth. Go ahead, finish that up, Buck.
For the Most High then showed signs for them, and held still the flood till they were passed over. For through that country there was a great way to go, namely of 1.5 years, and the same region is called Arsareth. And
like I said, brother covered that pretty good last time, so just go back in the archives of True Nation 12, and you will see when your tab is going, you know, deep into that breakdown. But just so you could see what I was telling you about some of our people, when you look at Jonah, they went into the Mediterranean. When you look at the history, the Mediterranean was one of the main seas where everything was taking place. All the, you know, you look at the Roman Empire, the Carthaginians, everybody that was anybody at that time was making moves through the Mediterranean Ocean. Wealth, olives, everything was being transported through that sea. But now let's get to, so that's what it is nowadays, modern day Iraq and Syria. You look at the globe, everything that was occupied. Obviously, the Western Hemisphere wasn't occupied. Go through that. So a lot of people believe it might have been Romania, Ukraine, Japan, America. Mankind had not dwelt in these places. These 3 locations, mankind had dwelt. Romania, Ukraine, it wouldn't take 1.5 years to get to these places. Because remember, people were migrating, going back and forth. They had the Silk Road, the King's Highway, all these roads that, you know, people were going through, and it wasn't taking them 1.5 years. Maybe Japan. But Japan, it was already occupied. The heathen were already there. So that wouldn't be the place that they went to. You got some maps of early exploration days. The Piri Reis map, it shows you, you know, the Portuguese people had this particular map, and it shows you the routes. You see out here, you got South America. You got the western coast of Africa. You got these individuals that were navigating through these lands. So it's not like it was something new. And when you look at Columbus, check out that movie 1492. It shows you that he knew about Esdras. He knew about the 750 leagues that it was going to take to get to the Americas. That's some of that information. Las Casas, he tells you it was going to take that Columbus knew that it was going to take 750 leagues. 700 leagues, individual traveled through day and night with no inconvenience. The last 50 leagues, he actually only traveled by day because he knew that he was close to land. So it wasn't a coincidence. It wasn't something that he just came across. Brother had knowledge. Not brother. That heathen had knowledge through brethren on how to get out here and who was out here. Because remember, he even went and got some individuals that spoke. Look, it says, Columbus learned from the crew of a Portuguese ship that they were returning from a land farther west. Moreover, Fernando Columbus states in his father's biography, this is his son, that Columbus had previous information of the existence of land in the West Atlantic and even possessed a map with charter islands in this sea, Caribbean. Columbus learned celestial navigation from the Portuguese pilots. Even when you look at the compass and all that, our people created that. He says he also taught to sail, and it goes forward. It says before Columbus was born, the Portuguese sailors were already familiar with the water currents and winds, which later brought him to the West Indies. So it was no coincidence when he got out here. You look at the drifts and all that, our people had knowledge of that. Remember Dan, Zebulun, Naphtali, mainly the Danites. They were always on ships, always navigating. So there's nothing new to them. Go read Kings and you will see that. Look at this right here. It says, this is of Christopher Columbus and the participation of the Jews in the Spanish and Portuguese discoveries. That's the name of the author. And it says, page 90, 91, Luis de Torres, a Jew who had occupied a position under the governor of Murcia and who was baptized shortly before, as he understood Hebrew, Chaldee, and some Arabic. Why would they be speaking this? Coming to America. No? Who was out here, right? It says, employed him as an interpreter. I mean, you going to India, I don't think they speak those languages in India, right? But obviously it shows you how, man, I forgot the name of the individual that first brought up. And when you look up Columbus, he started like everything else. I forget the term, but he was the one that brought out the fact that Christopher Columbus discovered America. Before that, you know, these scholars knew that, the whole story behind Columbus's voyage. So you look at the routes, even looking at these routes right here, you know, there's rivers in the ocean, right? So we come in here through the Euphrates. You come out this way, Caspian, Black Sea, Indian Ocean. You look at these currents, you come, catch them. You look at this, you might catch that one right there, but at the end of the day, which way do they lead? They're leading westward. So even going to Japan would have been a mission. Yeah, you could go to Japan, but really you think it's going to take a year and a half to go this way around India, right? That's going back to Esdras, not Christopher Columbus, to get out here to Japan. That don't look like it to me. And when you look at Magellan took the expedition, right? He went and circumnavigated the globe in 3 years. So if you look at this right here, that looks like center, right? We here, half of the earth. You come around this way, you hit this, you hit the Indian Ocean. The drifts, they're going to push you down this way. And everybody at that time, because when you look at that movie, 1492, it shows you how they were going around Africa and so forth. So showing you that these were the routes that they were taking at that time. So when you come this way, you go south, and at the end of the day, these currents, these drifts, they bring you to South America or the Caribbean Ocean. Either you go this way or you go northward and end up in the Caribbean. When he took his mission, Columbus, he was coming from out here, easy hit. Look at that. straight into San Salvador, which is where he landed on his first voyage. So from there, I don't know I got much time. Is there any questions?
Not at the moment, no.
Not right now. All right, so let me just pull up some of these videos, going back to what we had covered. So I talked about the cotton, right? Let me pull this up. Oh, snap, right? It was up there right now, though, wasn't it?
It's pointing through here.
There you go. So this is pretty much showing what I was talking about. Where's cotton being picked nowadays, right? Like I said, I wasn't able to come across a good, video showing our people really putting in work out there. But I mean, it is Peru, and you're gonna see, some of the individuals that pick this cotton. And I don't, So then it just goes into, how it goes from Peru all around the world. These heathens make that money out of them. Yeah, so pay attention to these labels when you get your clothes. There's sweatshops. If you think the sweatshops right here in downtown are bad, people in Central America, all the way down to South America, they get paid $5 a day to work in these sweatshops. How much do you pay for one of these shirts? $30. Imagine how many people they're paying. That's a day, $5 off of one shirt. Man, you're making a killing, right? Yeah. And it's worldwide. How much you think they're getting paid?
I mean, shoot, back in the day, they said they was paying people that were picking coffee. They was paying them like 20 cents.
Yeah. It's probably about the same though. Just imagine $5 a day. That's from what I've seen. It's in Mexico. We were able to go this year. People get $5 a day. So I think that's just in general. From Mexico down south, it's $5 a day, worth 8-10 hours. So we seen that, right, as in regards to the cotton. As far as the laborers, it's not over. It's still, our people still affected by it. But look at these things, for example. You got in Central America.
Good evening, and tonight we take you inside one of the most dangerous countries on earth, a place where criminal gangs control entire neighborhoods. And these gangs from El Salvador are now operating in nearly every corner of America. Families on both sides of the border caught in a toxic cycle of violence. It's a special edition of Nightline, Gangland. It's the middle of the night in the murder capital of the world.
Something's going on in the area.
We're in El Salvador, on patrol with armed-to-the-teeth cops.
This is a very dangerous place.
Who take us to this rundown police station where they're holding allegedly vicious combatants in this country's all-out gang war. many people are they holding here?
169.
169 people in here?
169 y cuatro celdas.
Imagine 4 cells for 170,
I'm sure
almost
you
70
can
people.
get a sense of how small this is, but this is tiny. They're just piled on top of each other. What does it say on your forehead?
El sello de la bestia. 666.
666, he says. Diablo.
El diablo, ¿no?
They're only supposed to be
Both
in here for
18 and MS.
72 hours. How long have you been in?
Yo tengo
That's 18.
1 year. This place, a clear sign that this impoverished nation may simply be overwhelmed. Do you ever get to step outside?
Nah.
By young people who feel they have no choice but to join a gang. How strong is the bond with your other gang members?
Familia por siempre.
This is the war next door. In tiny El Salvador, just over 1,500 miles south of the U.S. border, there's nearly 1 homicide an hour.
Rapes, shootings, and stabbings. MS-13 has left a trail of victims throughout greater Boston.
Living in our neighborhoods here in Southern California.
And now these gangs are exporting death directly into America.
Terrorizing the city of Greeley.
Active in 46 states.
Mata, viola, controla. Kill, rape, control.
Here in the El Salvadoran capital, the 2 main gangs, Barrio 18 and MS-13, have carved up the city into warring factions.
And it's a very hot area.
This is our translator, Rafael, who, like the cops, doesn't want gang members seeing his face and targeting his family. Every night, this team from the local morgue heads out to collect the bodies. It's only 9 o'clock and the body count is already at 7. Seemingly everybody is at risk here. We find a 23-year-old named Carlos shot inside his own home after ordering a pizza. This is his mother.
Era mi niño, para mí. 23 años tenía, pero él para mí era mi niño.
22 years old before that was her baby.
She insists her son wasn't even in a gang.
Me lo quitaron a mi niño, mi único niño, mi único.
Same stories out here, huh?
And this keeps going all night. Every night, 24/7.
But look at what's back there. Right? Let's get Psalms 106 right quick. That's a story. Isn't that the same story as as out here? Always. Yep. And our parents, they really want to believe that, unfortunately, but it's not what it is.
Wrong.
Go and check it out, though, because like I was saying, 250 years of wickedness. Then Isa came in aid, because remember, after that, when we got out here, we were keeping some of these statues. We were doing what we were doing, but then, again, we had tribal warfare, right? We had conflict within each other, because that's what happened to Judah in 70 AD. Sadducees, Pharisees, they all went at it with each other. Most High didn't even have to. By the time the Romans came through, it was just cleanup, to come through and take over. We did the dirty job, the dirty work. But get Psalms 106 and start at verse 34.
Psalms chapter 106 and verse 34. They did not destroy the nations concerning whom the Lord commanded them.
So our punishment goes way back. Saul didn't destroy the Amalekites. We all paid for it. And we continued on allowing these individuals to live. We're still paying for it. Go ahead.
Excuse me.
35.
Verse 35. But were mingled among the heathen and learned their works. And they served their idols, which were a snare unto them.
Exactly. You still got these idols. You go through with this word to these people. Some get it for a minute, but they're so in tune to all this santeria, all this, idol worshiping. They out here praying to these things, praying to the enemy that's giving the guns to, for these things to go on. But again, hard-headed people, right? Go ahead, continue.
Yea, They sacrificed their sons and their daughters unto devils,
Uh-huh.
and shed innocent blood, even the blood of their sons and of their daughters.
Because the lady is right there crying, right? My innocent baby. He wasn't even part of the gang or whatever. Even if he wasn't part of the gang, is he innocent? Is she innocent? Not in the eyes of the Most High. We out here doing so many Saint Hail Marys and Our Father prayers, vain repetition that Matthew 6 talks against, serving idols, worshiping other gods. Job 33 tells you the individual that's innocent is those that abide by the law. So then we might be like, oh, that's unfair. Nope. It's the judgment of the Most High. We read in Deuteronomy 28 that this was going to take place. Why is it that our people are getting hit? And remember, again, the Most High said that only our people are going to be facing these judgments as a nation. These things, yeah, they do happen. And it talks about the Middle East as well as how much they were, the stuff that they were going to be going through. And it tells you why. But when you go to Israel and you see how our people are affected by it, it's the same thing. Impoverished conditions that make us go and rob and do all these wicked things at the end of the day. That's everything that's in Deuteronomy 28, right? It says, yea, they sacrifice their sons and their daughters unto devils. You tell these to our people, they're like, nah, we don't do that. How is it we do that? We don't partake in those things. Yeah, you do. When you're not serving the Most High, you're breaking that first and second commandment. So guess what? You're doing everything that our ancestors did. Continue.
And shed innocent blood, even the blood of their sons and of their daughters.
Because imagine, they're coming up. These little ones don't know anything better. Don't know any better. So at the end of the day, that's what the Most High is talking in regards to innocent blood. You got drive-bys, little babies getting put out. You got pregnant women getting put out. So it says, yeah, and shed innocent blood, even the blood of their own sons and of their daughters. Go ahead.
Whom they sacrificed unto the idols of Canaan, and the land was polluted with blood.
Exactly. Look how bad it gets. Did you guys capture that? It was a homicide per hour? Imagine that.
We're heading into a neighborhood controlled by Barrio 18. We're going to talk to the gang leader in this neighborhood. We had to get that permission before we enter, because if you enter and they don't know who you are in serious danger. We're here to meet the local gang leader, who goes by the name of Clavo, which is Spanish for nail. You control this area. Does that mean you have to resort to violence?
Yeah, sometimes if you need to get hard, you go hard.
If you walked into an MS area,
They kill you.
they kill you.
If they come here this way, they maybe will kill us too.
So that's how fierce the loyalty is. You will kill somebody from a rival gang.
You know.
As a boy, he moved to Virginia, where he joined a gang. Then he got deported back to El Salvador, where his gang career continues. Now he says he wants to sneak back into America, in part to escape gang life, because he says he's tired of taking orders from the leaders, most of whom are in prison. So even though they're locked up, they can make a phone call and have somebody killed?
Yep.
And who would they ask you to kill?
I don't know. Maybe cop, maybe MS, maybe someone else.
And you don't even know why?
We don't even know why.
You just do it.
Just do it.
So that's crazy.
It's crazy, yeah.
And you're saying you do it because you feel like if you don't, they will kill you?
Maybe. Maybe they kill.
You see these individuals, do they look like gang members? Look like your uncle or your father out there, right? Straight bison status, just like somebody you see that you might, come across on the bus. But it's not like, huh? Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. There's other footage where it talks about, during the war, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Central America and their wars. It was bad. People were getting put out left and right. That's why a lot of our people migrated to the States. Even the MS and 18 started because of the hate that the Mexicans had towards the Central Americans, right here in MacArthur Park, right? So the Mexicans were picking on the Central Americans. They formed these gangs in order to defend themselves. And this is what happened. A lot of these kids or these youngsters, they were pretty much sons of the guerrillas from the days of the war. Just how you look at the Norteño cliques against the Sureño, the blue and red, right? You got red up north, you got the blues down here. When you look at that history, it was the same thing. The migrant people that came and went to the fields up here to work the fields, they were being discriminated by the city, 10 drivers from out here from Los Angeles, that they were going and picking on them out that way. In jail, they were going at it with them. So they formed those cliques to go at it with each other and defend each other, right? But we don't look at that Psalms 83, how these Confederate animals, says they are constantly plotting on how to keep us at each other's neck, right? We got no time for that, though, because at the end of the day, what do? Let's go to Isaiah. Isaiah 59 and verse 7.
Isaiah chapter 59 and verse 7. Their feet run to evil, and they make haste to shed innocent blood. Their thoughts are thoughts of iniquity. Wasting and destruction are in their paths. The way of peace they know not, and there is no judgment in their goings. They have made them crooked paths. Whosoever goeth therein shall not know peace.
Because we forgot about it. We read in Hosea 4 and 6, destroy for a lack of knowledge. We talk about this to our people? I'm trying to survive. It's about surviving. That's it. They don't know anything else. So you talk to a lot of Jakes in the hood, it's like, well, that sounds cool, but you know what? I got bigger problems right now. They don't see how, having that little bit of faith could end that. But we get stuck and stay stuck in these crooked paths. Go ahead, read 9.
Therefore is judgment far from us, neither does justice overtake us. But we wait for light. But behold obscurity for brightness, but we walk in darkness.
Imagine that. How many years have we cried for justice? America, Haiti, North America, Haiti, South, Central America, the Caribbean islands. The scriptures told us, right? Read that verse again.
Therefore is judgment far from us, neither does justice overtake us. We wait for light, but behold obscurity, for brightness, but we walk in darkness.
Go ahead.
We grope for the wall like the blind, and we grope as if we had no eyes. We stumble at noonday as in the night. We are in desolate places as dead men.
Exactly.
The weapons that are mostly used here by gang members are pickaxes, machetes, and guns.
We're at the city morgue with Munisha Kiley, who's from Canada originally. She's now part of a team of archaeologists who help identify victims found buried in unmarked graves, often dismembered.
Given that this is your job, do you ever lose sight of the fact that this was a human life as vivid as our own?
You do get desensitized, definitely, because especially working here in El Salvador, there's death all around us, so we're used to this.
This place is a brisk, efficient processing center for human misery. One technician tells us they see an infinity of death. Every day, families come to the morgue to search for the missing and to identify and collect the dead. We meet Araceli. Her 17-year-old son, Alexis, was killed last night. Just 2 months ago, one of her other sons was murdered by the gangs, at which point she says she applied for asylum in America for her family. She's still waiting for a response.
Está dura la situación. Pues me siento doliente. Corazón herido. Están matando a los que no se meten en nada y los hechores quedan felices, riéndose.
So that was that, right? Central America. That's just one sector. We'll visit South America, but let's go to Deuteronomy 28 and get verse 67. Actually start at 65.
Deuteronomy chapter 28 and verse 67. In the morning thou shalt say.
No, start at 65.
Verse 65. And among these nations shalt thou find no ease, neither shall the sole of thy foot have rest. Neither shall the sole of thy foot have rest, but the Lord shall give thee there a trembling heart, and failing of eyes and sorrow of mind.
So imagine that. So she's saying she's trying to she applied for asylum, right? For so she could come out here and not end up without kids. So sometimes you look at these so-called illegal aliens that come and take our jobs, right? It's funny. And you see the drive that these individuals, I know Al-Adab be out there like, man, y'all 10 tribes really know how to work. Yeah, well, imagine what they're fleeing from. It's like coming off them plantations. When our people came off them plantations and moved west, they were making moves. You know, just look at like Tazayuan's family, for example. They'll tell you about the moves that they made. You see how, you know, they established themselves because they knew where they were coming from. But nowadays, guess what? We have it all easy. So we out here, and we look at these individuals like, and they're really not taking anybody's jobs because the jobs that they do, nobody else is doing them. Really, you know? And you look at these same methods that they use out there to survive, they bring out here, right? But that causes another issue because they get out here and at the end of the day, what? Discriminated as well. They're fleeing from death out there. Get out here, now you got to deal with ICE, you got to deal with your brethren, you got to deal with the LAPD, everything. So what the scripture is saying, it says, and among these nations shall thou find no ease, neither shall the sole of thy foot have rest. But the Lord shall give thee there a trembling heart and failing of eyes and sorrow of mind. Continue with 66.
And thy life shall hang in doubt before thee, and thou shalt fear day and night, and shall have none assurance of thy life. In the morning thou shalt say, would God it were even. And at even thou shalt say, would God it were the morning. For the fear of thine heart wherewith thou shalt fear, and for the sight of thine eyes which thou shalt see.
So you look at that. No matter where are people at, you out here, it's constant trouble. No matter where our people have been scattered, right? No matter where we go, you out here in the hood, you out here in the east side, you out here trying to, you know, make sure that you on point. You traveling at night. Sometimes if it ain't brethren you sweating, it's just the cop rolling up and behind you. Most High's like, look, no matter where you go, you're gonna face no ease, no rest. Brother, tired, huh? We stay tired. We be talking, texting, brothers like, man, captivity's a mug. We trying to make our meetings over the phone. Why? Because we can't meet up. Where you coming from? I'm coming from work. 15-minute mission. I've been stuck in traffic for an hour. No ease. So the Most High said, look, I'm going to give you a good amount of days throughout the year so you could take some time off. Mandatory. And ease up for a minute. Let's go to Venezuela now.
Probably could have gotten one slice of pizza later at dinner.
Si llegan a disparar, sigan las instrucciones de nosotros. Que si yo les digo que se bajen a un sitio, ustedes se bajan. Si les digo que permanezcan, ustedes permanecen. Bueno, vámonos ya.
So it's the 13th year of the Chavez regime here in Venezuela, and his Bolivarian revolution has left the country deeply divided along political lines. Despite its egalitarian aims, the economic divide between the haves and the have-nots remains staggering. Despite all this, in this election year, the issue that will decide the future of this country is violence.
Projects don't look that bad, huh?
Venezuela has become known as one of the most dangerous countries in the world, and last year alone, Caracas had more violent deaths than Baghdad.
Imagine that.
With a population a tenth the size of the United States, Venezuela last year managed to record more murders than America, an astonishing 19,000 violent deaths in a population of 29 million.
If you want to compare with wars going on in other countries, they don't have that toll every week. So we have to ask ourselves, are we in a state of war?
Not even at war.
With the protection of Caracas' finest, we headed to Petare, a sprawling slum where a shocking percentage of the city's violence happens, to get a lay of the criminal landscape.
That's probably two ways to go to this neighborhood with the guys who run it from the inside and the guys who control it from the outside. Otherwise, the guys with the guns.
Estamos entrando en el barrio más grande de Venezuela, José Félix Río de Petare. Estos son los segundos barrios más grandes de América Latina.
I was feeling okay about this until the 800,000 disclaimers about what to do when and if we come under fire, and here's the evacuation, hide under the tires, and all that kind of made it a little more real.
We spoke with Luis Cedeno, the head of Paz Activa, an NGO that tracks violence in Venezuela.
What violence you would see in Petare? You would see gang violence. When these gangs have a shootout, you know, if you're in the middle of the shootout, you're gonna get hurt.
The craziest part is that this isn't organized narco violence. This is petty, you looked at my sister sideways, street bullshit.
If someone turns the corner and shoots it in and misses, either you or I is gonna die.
In Caracas, living in Petare counts as probable cause.
There are actually little arsenals in every barrio. You can go there and you can actually buy a gun, buy ammunition, access to grenades. You can actually rent the gun if you don't want to buy it, and it's a lot cheaper.
Puede ser como muchos están ahí, tienen problemas con delincuentes de otros barrios. Entonces puede ser que hayan armas ocultas, pero en este caso no había.
Stop, you know, and the patrol looks like a guy was not just drunk driving, but actually drinking while he was driving. And apparently drinking and driving isn't a big deal here.
On an average day in Venezuela, 58 people are murdered.
It's my nervous stick.
The entire time we were with the cops, the radio was crackling with reports of killings all around the city, and we were soon in pursuit of an armed suspect. With over 90% of crimes in Venezuela going unsolved, it wasn't quite a surprise that this call ended without a suspect.
You guys get the idea? That's just the crime aspect of things. I don't know if you guys have been up to date as far as the food supply and all that. People got to take about 8-hour missions to Colombia to try to get some food. And sometimes they make that mission, they take that mission and come back with no groceries, nothing. So there was a family that I recall, she was a teacher. So her and the husband, they would take turns. They would skip a meal. I mean, they would skip a day. In order for them to feed their kid, they had one kid. One would eat like a Monday. And then Wednesday, Friday, they would skip days. Because that's how bad the situation's gotten. In lines, like I said, 12, 13 hours sometimes in a line to get some food. Women are selling their hair for like $20 at the border of Colombia. They're coming through, they're bringing that hair, slanging it for a lot of money out here in America. But that's the situation in Latin America. I mean, I don't know. To me, these people fit the curses. Low key, they fit the curses more than the people out here when you really look at it. You don't think so? How not? No? I mean, take a mission. Take a mission. Go, because a lot of our people, you know, the scriptures even tell you, you know, to travel. You got to go around, because you go to Paris. There's situations in Paris that are pretty bad. You think about Paris, oh, that's Alisa. Our people are scattered throughout the 4 corners of the globe. These are third world countries. Any third world country has it worse than out here in America. But when you look at it, at the end of the day, I mean, Israel in general, no matter where we at, unless we're with these scriptures, guess what happens? We're going to face all these curses, no matter where you go. So that's one thing, like I said, you know, I wanted to just bring that out. And as far as the current situations of our people, you know, the current situations that we are a part of. But in the last section, what I want to cover is it's by Bartolome de las Casas, Devastation of the Indies, right? If you could read this, this is off of page 55, and you could start off from like right here. North. It's like the last paragraph off of page 55.
Devastations of the Indies, page 55, last paragraph. Nor are these hard-working Indians allowed to own a house or anything of their own. And in this respect, the Spaniards in Nicaragua have gone beyond the excesses of injustice that have prevailed on the island of Hispaniola.
All right, so going back to that Kings that we read, or the Chronicles, right? Our people had each other in bondage. What we just read in Nicaragua, who were you talking about right now? The who?
The Spaniards.
The Spaniards in Nicaragua. You got Spaniards in Mexico. You got Spaniards all throughout the lands that we occupied. So it said, but the Spaniards and Nicaragua, continue.
The Spaniards in Nicaragua have gone beyond the excesses of injustice that have prevailed on the islands of Hispaniola. The greatest and most horrible pestilence that has laid waste the province of Nicaragua was the freedom given by the governor to his subordinates in the matter of petitioning slaves from the caciques of the towns.
Petitioning what?
Petitioning slaves from the caciques of
Caciques.
the
So those are the chiefs, right? So that's what was going on and taking place. When you read Deuteronomy 28, 49, 50, it shows you all throughout the devastation of the Indies how these heathens, they had no regard. They had no respect towards the young, towards the age, nobody. I always bring out Tupac Amaru. When you look at Tupac Amaru, how he got split from a limb. They tied a horse to each of his limbs. That was an Inca emperor. You look at Montezuma, how he got done. Cuauhtemoc, all these individuals. Now we're reading about these individuals in Nicaragua, and he's saying that they were coming up on these slaves and doing what with them? Continue.
They petitioned every 4 or 5 months, and each time a new allotment. The governor could not obtain 50 slaves at a time by threatening the cacique with being buried at the stake or thrown to the fierce dogs if he refused.
So a cacique was pretty much the chieftain. It's actually even a Hebrew word when you look into it, and it means chief. So this individual was pretty much threatened to come up with these slaves because the Spaniards were coming through to take to the other lands that they were conquering. Continue.
Since the Indians do not commonly have slaves, at the most, a cacique may have 2 or 3 or 4. He simply went through the settlement, taking to begin with all the orphans, then taking one son from those who had 2.
Imagine that. So they were taking what we read about in, let's go back to Deuteronomy 28 right quick. What verse is it that I'm looking for? 32.
Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 32. Thy sons and thy daughters shall be given unto another people, and thy eyes shall look and fail with longing for them all the day long, and there shall be no might in thy hand.
So you look at that in the past, you look at that northern, southern kingdom, no difference. You look at it nowadays, school systems, right? You got these foster kids all throughout the Americas. Has anything changed? You slip up, you out here and you correct your child. Let Isa find out. Oh, Day of Atonement, right? That's what is it? That's cruelty. Nah, you can't be doing that. Watch when it gets back to the days of the Maccabees, because it's going to go back to the days of the Maccabees. That's where we're going to have to rise up. That's when, you know, the real individuals will be shown, and the ones that are marked 7 and 6ing, right, will be revealed. But just showing you how this, when the Most High says there's nothing new under the sun, really there isn't anything new under the sun. But finish that up.
Since the Indians do not commonly have slaves, at the most, a cacique may have 2 or 3 or 4. He simply went through the settlement, taking to begin with all the orphans, then taking one son from those who had 2, and 2 sons from those who had 3. In this way, the cacique completed the number demanded by the tyrant, with loud lamentations and weeping by the people, for it seems they most greatly loved their sons. And since this act was repeated many times, that whole kingdom became depopulated during the 20s and until the year 33.
So that's from 1520 to 1533. So pretty much out of time, but like I said, it's so much history, so much information. I pretty much just pulled out like one account right now. We'll make some segments and classes to really go throughout this history, but that was just showing like the curse. Like I said, I mainly focus in Deuteronomy 28 just to show maybe people that have never seen these things. Really, the scriptures tell you, take a trip, you know, go around. Brothers is about to probably hit Jamaica. Brothers that have never been and left, you know, like the brother said, 605, east of the 605. We really got to make those trips to really see what, you know, Israel's going through. Brothers went to Europe. Brothers went to Australia. You think Australia, really? It said it took them about 4 days, I think, searching. And they finally came across the Aborigine people, right? The Aboriginals. And they talked to them. They gave them the story how they used to go to war with each other. They gave them stories on how they believed in the fire, the baptism through fire. Israel scattered throughout the four corners. But like I said, one of the main things that's going to allow us to be able to discern who's who is that Romans, showing you that if we're able to keep these laws, these statutes, at the end of the day, you know, that's proof. But it doesn't take from the fact that we got to be of the seed of Israel. 1 Chronicles 9:1. But with that, we're going to close out. And like I said, we're going to go ahead and make a couple of classes to really go into all the stuff, because even with the language, you got a lot of language, a lot of words that pretty much align with the Hebrew. You got the customs. Our people were keeping from North to South America, the green ear moon. The green ear moon is basically what he called the new moon, the Passover moon. Salakia. Let me see if I got it right here. That'll be the last thing. Read that out.
The Incas held a festival in March similar to the Passover. The Yucatecan Indians practiced circumcision. Mexicans and Incas had eternal altar fires. Some Nicaraguans would not allow women who had recently given birth into the temples. Other parts of the law observed at various places included those which said that men should not sleep with women who had recently given birth. Adulteresses were to be stoned. Men and women must not wear each other's clothes, and a widow must marry her nearest relative.
All right, so this is one of the accounts off of the View of American Indians, page 45. And can you start reading from right here? Well, actually, from their ecclesiastical year.
Where's that at?
At the top.
Oh. The ecclesiastical year began with the new moon of the vernal equinox. According to Mosaic instruction, to the first appearance of every new moon, they pay great regard and name the season from the planting and ripening of the fruit. The green-eared moon is the most sacred, when the first fruits are sanctified by reaping offered up. When they travel, they count their time according to the ancient method by sleeps, or more properly by nights, making the evening and the morning the first day, and so on. The number and regular period of the Indian religious feast, as will be seen hereafter, is a fair historical proof that they counted time and observed a weekly Sabbath. Long after their arrival on the American continent, for the remark applies to all the nations, before the 70 years captivity, the Israelites.
That's good enough. If you continue reading, like I said, is a View of American Indians. It has a whole lot of different things that our people kept. And it talks about the Sabbaths. It shows you how they kept the Sabbaths compared to the other people, compared to the Europeans that showed up. Let me see, what else do we have right here? One thing I wanted to pull up. Check this out. This is from View of the Hebrews, and I believe it's, I don't have a page right here. This brother puts the video, I'll get the page by that time. But go ahead and read that.
In the Mosaic law, it was provided that the surviving brother of one deceased and childless should marry his widow to raise up seed to his brother. Mr. Adair informs that the Indians have a custom which appears to have originated in this law. A widow among them is bound by a strict Indian custom to mourn the death of her husband for 3 years or more, unless the brother of her deceased husband wishes to take her. In that case, she is released from this law. As soon as it is known that the brother makes love to her, she may then throw off her.
So you know where that's located in the scriptures, right? In Deuteronomy 25, verse 5. And a lot of these things, I mean, I brought them up because they're all scriptural. Let me see. Where did I put this at? That's one thing I wanted to pull up in regards to the 10 tribes. Here we go. Check this out. Because we were savages, right? It's the Europeans told us. Let's go to the video right quick. Read this, Ark.
First Chronicles chapter 12 and verse 32. And of the children of Issachar, which were men that had understanding of the times, to know what Israel ought to do, the heads of them were 200, and all their brethren were at their commandments.
So we have things like the Mayan and the Aztec calendar. When you do your studies, you'll understand that it's not just a rock with images, it's an actual calendar. They kept the moons, they got the what do you call it, the equinox, the vernal equinox, the autumn equinox. All of that is in this, you know, stone that you guys see. And I was able to visit this place, and I was tripping out. When you look at it, what does it look like? Exactly. And we just read in the scriptures. Like I said, there's documentation that shows you certain people were, they had the knowledge of what tribe they pertain to, what tribe they were a part of. That was, you know, when the Spaniards came through, but that doesn't mean that everybody from that location obviously is of that particular tribe. Come on. Slovakia. Not cool. I guess they don't want to play. You could look up observatory in Chichen Itza, the Chichen Itza Observatory, and it'll pop up so you get the information. Pretty much east out here, you know, in Griffith Park or whatnot, that's where they got this from. And when you look at the, and this is in Chichen Itza, which was one of the Mayan cities. That's where you see one of the big pyramids. What's the name of the big pyramid? The Great Temple. And this is the section that they had as far as, you know, going back into Chronicles, what we just read about. Our people had vast knowledge in the times. They, when it comes to the moon and all that, they when you look at the temple during the vernal equinox, what's the name of that snake? There's a snake, which pretty much the way that they laid it out, when the vernal equinox hits, you're able to see the snake, the shadow of it, you know? It might sound like, well, what's the point of that? Well, just to show you how they were so in tune to knowing the times. It was something that tribe of Issachar was given, all right? But like I said, we're out of time. We'll try to put a couple of, you know, segments together to try to get as much of this information out. But with that, we're going to rise, face the east. Is there any questions? All right. So let's go ahead and send them up.